I used to believe that nothing, absolutely nothing, could break the bond between my sister and me. We grew up side by side, two branches from the same stubborn tree, climbing the same backyard fences, sharing the same lunches, finishing each other's sentences long before we understood the meaning of loyalty. I was the older one, the steady one, the one who tried to soften our father's strict edges for her sake. And Mira, she was the spark, unpredictable, fierce, something like a wildfire with ribbons in her hair. Even as kids, the adults would smile and whisper, "That girl is going to run the world someday." I always assumed I'd be standing beside her when she did. The spinning, absorption ortpol in boo, auctions uster never expect. When our father's health began to decline, the family business, the company he spent 40 years building, needed a new leader. I'd been working beside him since I was 19, learning everything from the smell of printer ink in the accounting room to the weight of executive decisions on sleepless nights. Everyone, including me, assumed I would take over when the time came. Everyone but Mira. She never said it out loud, but I saw it. The hunger in her eyes whenever she stepped into the boardroom. The way she traced her fingers along Dad's office desk when she thought no one was watching. She wanted the title. She wanted the crown, and Dad, blinded by his own guilt for missing parts of her childhood, gave it to her. The announcement dinner was a blur. Dad cleared his throat, placed a trembling hand on her shoulder, and said, "Mira will be my successor." The room erupted in applause. I clapped too, though my palms stung with something that wasn't pride. Still, I told myself I could support her. I told myself she'd need me more than ever. I told myself she wouldn't cut me out. I was wrong. On Mira's first morning as CEO, she summoned me to the office. Not our office, the office I had once shared with Dad during long nights, full of half-empty coffee mugs and whispered strategic debates. Now it was hers. The lights seemed colder, sharper, as if even the bulbs knew the change in regime. She didn't stand when I entered. She didn't smile. She sat like a queen who had just discovered her throne, fingers interlaced, chin lifted, a portrait of confidence that felt too heavy for her shoulders. "Close the door," she said. A strange tension wrapped around the room. I waited for a conversation about responsibilities, or maybe a reassurance that she valued me. Instead, she slid a paper across the desk. "My termination letter. You're fired," she said smoothly, like she had practiced it in the mirror that morning. I felt the air puncture in my lungs. "Mary, what? You've been holding this company back," she replied. "I'm taking us in a new direction, and I don't need dead weight resisting progress." A dead weight, her brother. The person who trained her, covered for her mistakes, protected her from boardroom sharks. For a moment, I expected Dad to burst through the door. Or maybe for Mira to laugh and say it was a twisted joke. But her eyes were cold, glassy, distant, unfamiliar. And something inside me broke. Yet instead of yelling, instead of falling apart, I did the only thing my stunned mind could manage. I laughed soft, disbelieving at first, then harder until even she leaned back, unsettled, because she had no idea, none at all, what storm she had just inherited. And she had just fired the only person who knew how to save her from it. Losing my job didn't hit me all at once. It came in fragments, like the echo of a door slammed shut long after you've walked away from it. The first morning after Mira fired me, I woke up at 6 out of habit, showered, dressed, and only realized what I was doing when I reached for my car keys. My hand hovered there, frozen, as reality caught up with me in a sharp, breath-stealing wave. I didn't have a place to go anymore. I sat on the couch for hours that morning, staring at nothing while sunlight crawled slowly across the living room floor. Betrayal had a strange heaviness. It wasn't loud or explosive. It was a quiet, suffocating thing that seeped into the corners of the day. Mira hadn't just fired me. She had dismissed me from a lifetime of loyalty, as if I were a stain on her sleeve. The worst part was that Dad didn't know. Mira told him she restructured my role and he believed her, because hope is easier than heartbreak. I didn't correct him, not yet. I didn't have the strength. By the third day, grief simmered into frustration. By the fifth, frustration calcified into clarity. I found myself digging through the box of files I'd taken home. Reports, emails, feasibility studies, all the pieces of the company's backbone I had been trying to hold together. And that's when I saw it again, the debt, the bruised, rotting truth beneath the company's polished surface. Months ago, I had discovered that a series of bad investments and declining contracts had put the business in a precarious financial position. Dad had insisted it was temporary. Mira had waved away my warnings, insisting she would fix everything once she was in charge. But she never looked at the numbers. She only looked at the title. Now the debt was bigger, uglier, and entirely hers. As I stared at the spreadsheets, realization struck me with a cold, bittersweet clarity. Being fired had saved me. With a long breath, I closed the folder and set it aside. It was no longer my responsibility. I was no longer tied to Mira's delusions or Dad's wishful thinking. For the first time in years, I was free, and freedom unexpected, unplanned, and terrifying gave me a strange thrill. I decided to do something I hadn't done in a long time, build something of my own. I started small, scribbling ideas on sticky notes, mapping strategies across the dining table. What began as a desperate distraction slowly formed into a blueprint. A consulting firm, leaner, more adaptable, built on the years of expertise Mira had dismissed as dead weight. I filed the paperwork. I made calls. I reached out to old colleagues quietly, respectfully, without a trace of bitterness. Word spread faster than I expected. A handful of loyal clients followed me immediately, not because I begged them, but because they trusted me. Meanwhile, Mira mocked the idea. I heard through the grapevine that she had laughed when someone mentioned I was starting my own little company. "Let him try," she reportedly said. "He'll be crawling back in a month." But her words no longer stung. They didn't define me anymore. Every morning I built something new. Every night I felt a little lighter, and somewhere in the background I could feel it. The slow rumble of instability in Mira's reign. Investors were restless. Employees whispered about her temper. Contracts slipped through her fingers like sand. She might have had the crown, but I had the freedom to build my own throne. And for the first time since the day she fired me, I felt alive again. The first signs of Mira's unraveling came quietly, like cracks whispering through ice. A rumor here, a delayed payment there, a clipped tone from an investor during a board meeting. People who once praised her fiery confidence now questioned her judgment in hushed conversations, careful not to let their words drift into the wrong ears. But trouble has a way of snowballing when the wrong person is in charge, and Mira was the wrong person. I didn't indulge in gossip. I had fully stepped away from the world she now ruled, but news travels, especially to the one who used to be the company's anchor. Former colleagues called me, not out of loyalty to Mira, but out of habit, out of the instinct to ask someone who actually listened. "Your sister rejected another financial advisor," one whispered. "She fired half the marketing team," another murmured. "She refuses to renegotiate the debt." Each piece was a nail in a coffin she didn't realize she was building. Meanwhile, my own consulting firm was blossoming. What began as a hopeful experiment turned into a fully booked operation. Clients valued transparency, logic, and humility, qualities Mira had shed the moment she sat in that leather CEO chair. My office was small, the furniture mismatched, but the energy was alive. Every signed contract felt like an exhale of relief, a sign the world hadn't abandoned me after all. Then, one chilly evening as I closed my laptop, my phone buzzed with a name I hadn't expected to see, Mira. I hesitated. The last time she spoke to me, she'd tossed me out of the company like a scrap of old paper. But curiosity and lingering sibling instinct pushed me to answer. When I said hello, all I heard was shaking breath. Can we talk?" she said, not a queen's command, not a CEO confidence, a frightened girl's plea. I met her the next morning at a quiet cafe. She looked different, thinner, exhausted, her once perfect posture crumpled like she could barely hold herself together. She didn't order anything, just twisted a napkin between trembling fingers. "The investors are threatening to pull out," she confessed. "The debt is worse than I thought. Nobody's listening to me." I almost laughed at the irony. She fired me for being dead weight. Yet here she was, desperately trying to grab onto the same weight she once threw away. "What do you want from me, Mira?" I asked gently. Her voice cracked. "I need your help. You've always been better at this. Please tell me what to do." There was a time I would have done anything for her. A time when family meant something sacred, but she hadn't just fired me. She had humiliated me, dismissed years of sacrifice, and destroyed the relationship we had spent a lifetime building. "Mira," I said after a long moment, "I can't fix this for you." Her eyes widened not in anger, but in genuine disbelief, as if the universe had always revolved around her, and she was only now realizing it didn't. "But you're my brother," she whispered. I corrected softly, "until you decided I wasn't needed." She looked like I had struck her. But it wasn't cruelty, it was truth. A week later, the opportunity arrived like poetic timing. A major supplier, one that Mira's company relied on heavily, reached out to me. They were tired of delayed payments and broken promises. They wanted stability. They wanted leadership. They wanted me. I didn't steal the contract. I didn't manipulate anyone. I simply accepted what Mira had pushed away. And the moment I signed the agreement, I felt it. The final thread of her paper kingdom snapping in half. Her reign, built on pride and denial, was collapsing. And I had nothing to do with it, except walking away when she told me to. The bankruptcy announcement arrived on a crisp Thursday morning. I read the news over coffee, my hands steady, my chest strangely light. Mira's kingdom, her paper throne, built on ambition and arrogance, was crumbling. Investors fled, employees scattered, contracts vanished. The empire she had dreamed of ruling with an iron fist was reduced to dust. I didn't gloat, I didn't need to. Watching her empire falter was a quiet victory, one that whispered instead of shouted. There was something profoundly satisfying in knowing the truth had caught up with her. Without my needing to lift a finger, she had sown the seeds of her own downfall the day she fired me. Yet, the final act of this story required more than patience. It required presence. I attended the auction for the company's remaining assets, not to buy power, not to gloat, but to honor something far greater, my father's legacy. The office building, the equipment, the memories etched into every corner. I purchased them all. Mira didn't know until she read the headlines, and I imagined the flicker of disbelief that must have crossed her face. When we finally met, it was outside the office building, the autumn sun casting long shadows over cracked pavement. Mira approached me cautiously, shoulders hunched as if trying to shrink herself to a size that would be less threatening. Her eyes, once sharp, fiery, and untouchable, were red, swollen from sleepless nights and bitter tears. She looked like a queen dethroned, a child who had realized the rules of the world were not written to favor her. "You bought it," she whispered, voice trembling. "Yes," I said, calm, steady, almost boringly so. "I bought it back, for Dad, for what he built, for everything you forgot existed beyond your own ambition." Her lips quivered. I thought you wanted revenge. I shook my head, smiling softly. I didn't. Revenge is petty. What I wanted was freedom, and what I've gained my own path. My own purpose couldn't have happened if you hadn't fired me. Her eyes searched mine, confused, hurt, frustrated. So you're just going to walk away? I nodded. Yes, because I'm done being part of your story. Your choices are yours. Your downfall is yours. And I've spent long enough carrying the weight you refused to understand. A single tear slipped down her cheek. She wanted rage, she wanted bitterness, she wanted the kind of confrontation that might give her closure. But there was none to give. I had no malice left in me, only clarity, only calm. She began, then stopped. Words failed her. I turned toward the office, stepping through the doors once again, not as a fired sibling, not as someone chasing vengeance, but as a guardian of legacy and a builder of my own future. The hall smelled of polished wood and memories, silent witnesses to decades of effort and love. Mira would have her chance to rebuild if she chose, but it would be on her own terms, without me to rescue her from the consequences of her pride. And that, I realized as sunlight streamed across the marble floors, was the sweetest revenge of all, not triumph over her, not vindictive victory, but proof that I could rise above betrayal, transform heartbreak into purpose, and walk away laughing quietly because the fire she set to destroy me had only forged me stronger. I paused at the doorway, glanced back once at the sister who had tried to erase me, and whispered, more to myself than to her, "Thank you for setting me free." And with that, I stepped into the future I had built, one I had earned, one no one could ever take away.